What the f*** is going on, YouTube? It's Ashcon, aka Dropped Out Beats, back again with another Addiction Neuroscientist Reacts video. For those just tuning into the channel, I'm a trained addiction neuroscientist and hip-hop producer, and today we're going to be looking at Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas in an old interview with Oprah talking about her methamphetamine addiction and how it actually induced paranoia in her. I don't know that it was a full-blown methamphetamine-induced psychosis episode, but it was serious paranoia that was induced by methamphetamine, and so we're going to look at how methamphetamine can actually cause psychosis through damage to your brain cells. With that being said, please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get these numbers up. Hit the like. Not going to waste any more of y'all's time. Let me throw my headphones on. Take my big, ugly head off of the screen and put Fergie and Oprah's beautiful face onto the screen. Let's get into it and hear what they had to say.
And what is so interesting is that just about a decade ago, you were broke, right? You were addicted to drugs and unemployed.
Yes.
A long way from those hard times.
Yes.
You are right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what got me through it was a lot of therapy, soul searching, discovering why I took the drugs in the first place, because that's really what it is.
You were addicted to crystal meth.
Yes.
I just got to pause and say, I think it's funny that we say crystal meth as if most powdered substances can't be made into a crystalline form. I feel like that's something that like law enforcement came up with. They were like, well, what if we call it meth rock? And they were like, nah, that doesn't land. People don't sound scared of it. They think they're going hiking or something. The Coloradoans and the Utahans, they're like, where's meth rock? That's a 14er? I got to go climb meth rock. But then they were like, well, maybe if we call it crystal meth. And everybody was like, what the? A drug that's a crystal? Oh, shit, that's really scary, man. Crystal drugs? You can make a drug into a crystalline form. LSD, MDMA, cocaine. I mean, you can make crystalline forms of these drugs. It just makes it sound more scary when it's called crystal meth. Back to the video.
Isn't that horrible? I hear that's horrible. It like...
Yeah. It does a lot of things. It
destroys.
Yeah, so I'll pause again real quick and make my head big because I think this is a common thing that people think that like the actual smoking of methamphetamine causes your teeth to decay. And so if we go look at research from Carl Hart, I'm not going to put it up on the screen right now because that's not what we're focused on today. We're focused on methamphetamine-induced psychosis, but Carl Hart basically suggests that the only reason that people who use meth develop meth mouth is just because they don't brush their teeth. They're high on meth all the time and they forget to brush their teeth and they're not concerned with brushing their teeth. They're up grinding their teeth, so their teeth, are gonna start to decay from the grinding. But it's not just that like meth smoke is so toxic that it rots your teeth out. That doesn't really seem to be the case and is largely propaganda. So let's get back into it.
Your neurotransmitters. Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It can make you crazy.
Yeah. So what made you take it in the first place? What was going on?
I was in a group called Wild Orchid, and it just wasn't working, and so they tried to make us do different things, and it just started feeling inauthentic and wasn't really the style that I felt that I wanted to go for. And
you weren't being yourself.
Wasn't being myself. And what I should have done was said, girls, it's really time for me to go on my own. I need to fulfill this dream of mine to have a solo album. And I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to deal with that confrontation. I wanted to please them.
So you tried drugs instead?
So hey, why not try some meth?
Rather than say what needs to be said, I think I'll take drugs,
yes,
right?
I didn't know how to deal. So I got into a scene. I started going out and taking ecstasy. From ecstasy it went to crystal meth, and And at
'Cause
first,
you need
at
a
first
higher high?
with any drugs, it's, everything is great at the beginning, and then slowly your life starts to spiral down.
It almost killed you, right?
Yeah.
You were
and
90 pounds.
90 pounds at one point.
What was your rock bottom?
So I'm going to talk in depth about rock bottom in the Mike the Situation video that's going to be released on Thursday, but just wanted to put that disclaimer in here that you don't have to hit rock bottom to stop using a drug that you're struggling with. You can just decide to do so. So don't let the trope of rock bottom be your the thing that you're looking for to quit using a substance you're struggling with.
My rock bottom was my brain had been playing a lot of tricks on me. I thought the FBI was after me. You're kind of living in this kind of alternate reality. Mm-hmm. It's very
Were you doing
strange.
it every day?
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. And I started getting really paranoid. So I went one day into this church, and I thought that the FBI and the SWAT teams were outside of the church. And
this is what the drug was
This is what the drug was telling me. There's a lot more that goes. There's a whole dancing ninja that was on my balcony, which I don't know if we need to go into.
That's what us degenerate dropouts over here wanted to hear about, Fergie. We wanted to hear about the dancing ninjas that were coming after you. I'm going to be totally honest. We're degenerates over here, and we've been through shit. So we want to hear about the dancing ninjas.
But my mind was going some places. So I had a conversation with God. I'm very close with my higher power. I have a very strong connection with it. And I said, all right, if I go out there and the FBI and the SWAT team's not out there, then it's the drugs, and I'm stopping. But if they're out there, then obviously I was right this entire time, and it's a big conspiracy. So obviously I went outside of the church, and they actually kicked me out. And there was no SWAT team. There was no FBI. Just me and God. And
did you keep your promise?
I kept my promise.
Yeah. That day?
That day.
That was it?
That was it.
How long were you on drugs? How long were you in that spiraling down?
It was very quick for me. I was actually lucky I went crazy because that made me stop. It was a year, almost a year's time. So it was pretty quick.
Yeah, so I thought that was a good little segment, especially because I had no idea that Fergie ever struggled with a methamphetamine addiction. But she also says that, she got in touch with God and the higher power. And I just want to say that if you're struggling with addiction, I think for a long time, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous controlled the communication of how you had to get sober, and that included that you needed to believe in this higher power, that you don't have control over your drug use. And while some of that may be true, that you don't have control over your drug use, you don't have to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous type 12-step type program and believe in those things that we'll hear from Fergie and then Mike the Situation on Thursday. I just want to say that because Alcoholics Anonymous is great. 12-step programs work for a lot of people, but for some people like myself, I'm an atheist, so the religious aspect of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous would definitely turn me off, and I know it turns off other people. So if that's not for you, that's okay. If it is for you, that's great, and if it helps you quit, that's great. We don't care. We're not judging here how you quit, just that you get better. And so if that turns you off, if that's not for you, just go find a substance use disorder therapist, counselor, preferably not through BetterHelp. You won't see this channel being sponsored by BetterHelp. And they should be able to help you in the ways that is tailored to you, where you don't have to believe in a higher power. But if you want to believe in a higher power, that's great, because it can help you stop, right? Whatever helps you stop, that's what we care about on this channel. Whatever helps that downward spiral that Oprah was talking about, that's what we care about on this channel. And so, like I said, we'll get in depth into not having to go into rock bottom to get sober from the drug that you're struggling with on Thursday with Mike the Situation. But just as it relates to Fergie's rock bottom, that doesn't sound too bad from other people's rock bottom. You know what I mean? Just having some methamphetamine-induced paranoia and that being the thing that helps you get sober from meth, hey, that's great. That's not too terrible of a rock bottom. I mean, she said she was unemployed and all this stuff, but it seems like she, had enough money to take care of herself, right? She wasn't homeless. She wasn't begging for money. She wasn't prostituting herself. You know what I mean? Like, so rock bottom can be so different for everyone, and we'll really get into that on Thursday. So come back to the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit the like, and we'll be back on Thursday. But let's get into the neuroscience of it all. Let's look at, we're not going to watch the animation from 2 Minute Neuroscience today, although shout out always to the Habibi 2 Minute Neuroscience for giving us some good animations here, because this is good, simple neuroscience that I can easily point and explain to you guys. So today we're going to be looking at a synaptic connection between a presynaptic neuron on the left and a postsynaptic neuron on the right, where we have dopamine receptors located, and then we have our green dopamine neurotransmitter here in the space between these two neurons called the synaptic cleft. This says amphetamine, but methamphetamine is just a specific type of amphetamine, right? We just throw a methyl group on our amphetamine and we have methamphetamine. It works basically the same way generally from a more bird's eye view when we don't get into the super nitty gritty, super nerdy stuff. This is just baseline nerdy, you know what I'm talking about? So you take meth, it comes into your system, and it blocks what are called these transporter proteins. Transporter proteins basically take this dopamine, put it back into this presynaptic neuron to go into these little synaptic vesicles that hold the dopamine. And so it's repackaged to be re-released and recycled and reused. So amphetamine comes up here, blocks this transporter protein, so the dopamine is forced to hang out in this synaptic cleft space for longer and therefore can bind to dopamine receptors. Methamphetamine also blocks this VMAT2 transporter, so we actually have an increased amount of dopamine in this synaptic vesicle being stored, and methamphetamine can actually get into this vesicle itself. When the vesicle comes down here to release dopamine, there's going to be more dopamine packed into those vesicles, along with a little bit of methamphetamine. So then methamphetamine can go back and do it all over again. Block the transporter protein, come back in here, get into the VMAT, or get into the synaptic vesicle through VMAT2, be released, you get the cycle. Methamphetamine can also cause these transporter proteins to reverse. So you see these arrows going into the into the neuron. It can cause them to have the arrows going out so that dopamine will actually be forced to come out of these transporter proteins instead of go into them. And so this is kind of just the baseline way that methamphetamine, or the baseline mechanism of action for methamphetamine in your brain and how it works specifically on dopamine receptors and dopamine transmission. It works on other neurotransmitters like serotonin and neuroepinephrine in a very similar way, but for today, we'll just focus on dopamine because we're going to get into some specific dopamine circuitry. I will also say that Fergie mentioned she started taking MDMA or ecstasy and then kind of progressed to methamphetamine, and Oprah said, oh, you need a higher high. It's not really the way this works all the time. I think that's kind of normie ways of thinking about things. If you needed a higher high, a good example, go back to the DMX video, a good example would be if you snorted methamphetamine, then you could smoke methamphetamine, right? Different ingestion will get you higher, and therefore make the drug more addictive, right? That's what we talked about. Go check out the DMX video. Super important stuff there. But so let's just look at quickly how methamphetamine can actually cause brain damage and neuronal loss by damaging glutamate and dopaminergic pathways. So This is from a science article that I will link down below in the description that gives us a flowchart of how meth can damage your brain cells. So, you take the methamphetamine, it causes an excessive enhancement of all three dopaminergic pathways that we'll look at here in a minute. This causes an excessive glutamatergic overflow into the cortex, which then damages GABA interneurons in the cortex. That causes a loss of GABA interneurons in the cortex, which leads to glutamatergic dysregulation from the cortex, which then leads to paranoia and eventually psychosis. So, if we actually look at some fMRI scans of the brain, it doesn't matter. You can see these. So this is from the left parasylvian cortices, which these researchers say are known substrates for developing psychosis. I won't argue with them here. We'll just say that they're right. We can see that there is brain cell loss in all of these areas that they are pointing to. Let me see if I can zoom in here just a little bit more. Yeah, you can see this yellow area here in the left parasylvian cortices. We see some brain cell loss here, all these yellow areas. We're starting to see some brain cell loss, and this particularly is contributing to psychosis. We also know that paranoia goes hand in hand with antisocial behaviors, right? Because if you're paranoid, you're going to be scared to interact with the outside world. So that's going to cause you to be antisocial. And so if we look at these, we can see that there's brain damage in the frontopolar and orbitofrontal areas, which are known substrates for antisociality. And we can see that there's neuronal loss in all of these highlighted yellow areas here that are also contributing to the paranoia and psychosis. So using a lot of methamphetamine, highly not recommended, can cause brain damage. It should be noted that ADHD medications we know can cause psychosis in a similar way that methamphetamine can, but it takes a lot more amphetamine, from my understanding, to cause any sort of psychosis, paranoia. Methamphetamine is much more potent in that regard, and that is why ADHD medications are perfectly safe, especially at the doses that psychiatrists and medical professionals prescribe them at. You can take them every day and you will never develop psychosis or paranoia, assuming you don't have a vulnerability to developing that. So just want to make that clear. So now let's look at some of this complicated brain circuitry to kind of understand how meth can cause brain damage and where it causes brain damage. Let me scroll down here to see if we can get this VTA. So this VTA is one of our main areas of dopamine projections, or where where a lot of our main dopamine projections come from in the brain. We can see this green pathway is our mesolimbic dopamine projections to the nucleus accumbens, and we see dopamine D1, D2 receptors here. They called this the orange pathway. This looks more like yellow or gold to me. So let me know in the comments. Is it yellow, gold, or orange? I don't know. I'm freaking might as well be colorblind. I'll let my wife decide or something. She's a color master. But so these are the mesocortical dopamine projections, which increase cortical glutamatergic firing, which then creates this loop. So if we look at these yellow projections, it goes to the cortex, and then these purple projections feed right back into the VTA to cause more dopamine to be released. And so there's one dopamine pathway in green, another dopamine pathway in yellow, orange, or gold. Let me know in the comments down below what it is. And then we also have our last dopamine pathway here in red that is responsible for movement, called the nigrostriatal pathway. We can see here, if you take nothing else from this, just look at the thickness of the lines. The lines are not very thick anywhere on this graph, whether it be the black lines, red lines, green lines, yellow lines. They're all relatively orderly, nice to the eyes. You know what I mean? They're not super bold. we have a normal amount of dopamine coming out of all of these areas. But so when I scroll down here to their next diagram, their next figure, look at how huge and fat these lines have become. We have huge bold lines because we have so much dopamine going all over the place from the ingestion and continuous ingestion of methamphetamine. We can see here how dark our black circle is from the VTA, how bold our yellow projections are to the cortex. We can see how bold our green projections are to the nucleus accumbens. And then especially here's where we start to see damage to the striatum and movement areas. These cortical projections, huge glutamatergic cortical projections going back to these GABAergic interneurons and the striatum. And then we have these GABAergic interneurons also here in the cortex receiving glutamatergic projections from the thalamus. And so where we see these NMDA receptors on these cortical GABAergic interneurons is actually where we're going to start to see damage to those interneurons. They're going to experience some type of cell death and therefore not be able to regulate the glutamatergic projections. GABA being our main inhibitory neurotransmitter, glutamate being our main excitatory neurotransmitter. Go watch 2-Minute Neuroscience to go learn what that means. It's pretty easy to learn, quick information. You definitely need to know this type of neurocircuitry if you're going to become a neuroscientist. If you're watching this channel and you're striving to become a neuroscientist, this is what it looks like. So, like I said, these GABAergic interneurons with these NMDA receptors are actually what's going to be experiencing cell death to stop the regulation of glutamatergic pyramidal neurons. That's going to cause way too much glutamatergic projections all over the brain. It's going to lead to paranoia, psychosis, brain damage. Overall, ugly stuff, guys. Don't develop a methamphetamine addiction. It will cause you some serious issues in life. Don't recommend. So anyway, that's going to be the video for today. I appreciate all you beautiful degenerates tuning into the channel, dropping out with me. You know what I'm talking about. We turning on, tuning in, and dropping out over here. Please subscribe to the channel. We trying to get those numbers up. Share the channel with your friends so we can get some good drug information out there. Stop all this BS propaganda. Drugs are not the scariest thing in the whole world when you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about. We have serious drug problems in this country, and propaganda ain't gonna help it. So share this with your friends. Tell them to like the channel. Tell them to subscribe. Comment down below. Are these yellow, orange, gold lines? I don't know. Comment down below if you have an experience with methamphetamine-induced psychosis so someone can relate to your story and most likely be helped by you. If you need help, get in the comments down below. I bet someone is going to try to help you, because this is while we're all degenerates together, and we all try to help each other out. So yeah, get in the comments, subscribe to the channel, hit the like. I appreciate all you beautiful degenerates. That's going to be it for me. Peace out, y'all.